The importance of being emotionally regulated takes on a different set of importance when we're talking about ensuring that our emotions are in check to confront life with all of the emotional fervor it takes to be successful. And according to my friends at the American Psychological Association, 84% of today's Americans have experienced at least one emotion related to prolonged stress, such as anger, sadness, or anxiety. Furthermore, according to my friends at the National Institute of Health, most Americans recognize the importance of regulating their emotions in order to make sound and just decisions that will impact the duration and quality of their lives. The Institute says that emotional regulation is reported in both high points of life at 43% and low points at 73% when we're talking about how it impacts our daily lives. For my friend Pennie Wilson, she is a mental fitness coach and the founder of Kokoro Creators. It's a heart-centered movement which empowers soul-led creators to move beyond fear, self-doubt, and emotional overwhelm in favor of achieving clarity, increased confidence, and aligned creation. Through her Kokoro Repatterning Method, she guides people to retrain their internal response to pressure by strengthening their emotional regulation, self-awareness, and calm presence. Her work integrates mindset science, subconscious programming, and transformation from the inside out. And Wilson joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Pennie, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn how you're helping people manage their emotional intelligence and regulate their nervous system, my friend. Great to see you and happy Monday to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I'm super excited to be able to support whoever is able and ready to move forward.
Absolutely. So, Pennie, I wanted to start our conversation by asking your opinion on the importance of emotional intelligence and how that sort of concept has evolved over time to really give people the emotional sort of structure and the professional structure to really go after what they want to in life in terms of how their emotional security can also relate to other aspects of their lives. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
That's a very loaded question. Let me begin by sharing the beginning of my story. It kind of takes me back to a piece that I learned in my PE coaching minor that went from when you're practicing life or a new skill, it goes from a state of unconscious, unaware. You keep going, you make mistakes, you keep going, you get better and better, and then eventually you get to a place where you do it unconsciously and you're aware of it. So 20 years ago, I started out in a state of what I call momzilla. I was unaware of my emotional state. I had no idea how to process my emotions. I didn't know what to do, how to say how I from that case, just total opposite side. Now, when something comes up in my life, I'm able to pause. I'm able to reflect. I'm able to ask myself, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? So those two completely opposite pictures can give you the idea of why emotional intelligence is so, so important. That we're either acting from a state of unconsciousness, continually reacting, not knowing why we're doing what we're doing, or we gradually move into a state of choosing with intention to move toward what we desire. And that brings joy and fulfillment and able to truly be an instrument in empowering other people. So for people that want to move toward joy and abundance and whatever it is they want to create in their life, it is an emotional intelligence experience, one step at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dive into the idea of emotional reactivity because I know, that, as you mentioned, that was a big part of your journey and finding a sense of calm. And I know from people that experience this, sometimes when you're overregulated emotionally, we often equate that with being some sort of fault of our own. But I know it's something that you believe that emotional reactivity is something that we need to work through rather than blame ourselves for. And I'm wondering your thoughts on the connection between emotional reactivity and a state of calm, my friend. What do you think people need to know?
Yeah. So when I was in that beginning of the journey, I had no idea that calm was even a thing. I didn't know that it was something that I should be trying to work toward. What was happening in the back of my brain is that emotional reactivity. I felt like it was in this constant emergency. I was running go from a train. I did where, and this is very empowering in any modality or any place in life. First is the Kokoro 4 R's. So the first R is to recognize what is actually happening. What is going on? Why am I doing this? Asking yourself intuitive questions so you can get to a place of awakening. The second thing is to remove. What is it that you don't want? Third thing is to replace it. What do you want? And the fourth thing is to reimagine. What was the old life that you want to let go? And what's the new life you want to create in your mind? Visualization is a huge part of being able to transform that old part into your new part. So when it comes to doing calm, it's a baby step graduation. People can begin with simply, I remember being in that place of not knowing that calm was a thing. And then my mentor's like, she's talking to me about parenting and choosing not to react and helping me to recognize how being calm would empower that relationship, would empower the child, would help them be more emotionally healthy. So first is choosing it. When you get to a place of recognizing the old life, that really isn't your fault. As you mentioned, I do believe those default patterns were created in your past. When you grew up from 0 to 7, you had absolutely no intentional choice to choose the family you were born into and all the things that happened that programmed your brain from 0 to 7. So when you look back on that part, you can recognize I didn't choose that. Now, in the present moments, when you have that power to choose. So when you choose calm, it's realizing that first is compassion. I didn't choose it. I am where I am now, just accepting the place, being honest and evaluating where you are, and claiming your power to choose means that you can recognize that your breath has the power to slow down your body. And the more that you choose calm, the more you'll gain power to choose it again. So just really tuning in, breathing is something, a very huge tool that I teach people in the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And but I also wanted to ask you about how we can use our emotional vulnerability as a strength, because I believe that being emotional can be a competitive advantage as we go through life if it's regulated properly. So tell me about how we can use emotional vulnerability and turn it into a strength in life, my friend? What are your thoughts then?
I love that question because vulnerability is so powerful. Brene Brown is the epic of defining vulnerability, right? And she puts it into a place where you recognize that you're putting yourself out there in a way that you could be exposed and even hurt. But emotional vulnerability creates a relatability. It's the opposite of AI, right? AI being a very good tool for automation, but it's not for human connection. You're going to be vulnerable gives you that space to create that human connection. But also a part of vulnerability I have learned very personally over the past week is allowing myself to be seen and allowing myself to make mistakes. Last Saturday, I had a music performance where I went on stage as an adult, and it was my first performance in the singing world. So afterwards, I noticed that some of my notes were off key. And I was talking to my music teacher about it. And she said, in the music world, it's as if you're a 9-year-old child and you haven't yet practiced how to get your voice on tune as much as you want to, but your performance was amazing. So just allowing myself to be seen, making those mistakes, that's a part of vulnerability. It's huge. It's courageous. It's allowing yourself to be seen in a way that other people are going to see your journey. They're going to see your growth. They're going to see your good and your bad. And it's going to create human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are your thoughts on the steps necessary to rewrite our brain from an emotional standpoint to live the life that we want or are intending to live, my friend? Your best piece of advice when it comes to rewriting your brain to make sure emotionally that we live the life that we want to live, my friend? What are your thoughts then?
I love that you put it in the frame of what are the steps. My brain is literally wired to think about strategy. What are the steps? What does it look like? I have studied over the past 20 years how to create emotional transformation and what that looks like to go from the past state into the forward state. So, the 4 R's that I mentioned is one of the huge things that creates those steps so that you can literally look one at a time, recognize, remove, replace, and reimagine. I think when it comes down to the strategy of how to do it, that would answer that question. And the common thread that runs through any type of modality that works, whether it's traditional therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or RTT, which is a rapid, hypnotherapy. I am a non-traditional hypnotherapist in the state of I want to help people be empowered to be able to create those programs in their own mind. So I teach them exactly what it is, not just the how of the steps, but walking beside them with the what. So the three things that I imagine in my mind are like twisted together as a braided cord that create new programs in the brain is words, images, and emotions. And when you focus on those three things in a calm meditative state, you can use the 4 R's in combination with that to recognize what you don't want and replace it to what you do want. And you were talking about moving toward what you desire. One of the images that we teach is so powerful, not only to help organize the mind to recognize what you do want and what you don't want, but it helps you to see with compassion how to get there. So imagine you're standing on the beach and you're looking out at the sky. And on the right side, there's the sun. So bright, so beautiful. It's warm. It's pouring down on your skin. You feel the warmth moving through your body. That represents the state of what we desire, the joy that pulls us forward. There's a word that I love called heliotropic in the sense of a plant that leans toward the light. It is naturally attracted toward what it wants. So that's the state of desire that we're looking for. We want that heliotropic effect to pull us up toward what we desire. The opposite side of the sky and the opposite side of this paradigm is the clouds. If you look over on the left side of the sky and imagine again you're standing on the beach, you see the clouds and there's the storm and all the things that are happening in that moment where you're triggered, where you're not emotionally regulated. And that represents the opposite of that desire, which is fear. These two powers pull us in both directions at the same time. The desire that pulls us up and the fear that pulls us down. So actually learning how this becomes a practice in your life, you continually, and that's why I call it mental fitness, you continually work to recognize where is my mind pointed? What is my body experiencing? And how to use those three core elements to program your mind to feel what you want to feel in your body, to say the words that you want to say in your mind, and to recognize that images are key. Images, they also represent the memories of the past or the imagined future. So those are the three core things that help us to recognize and to literally put the power in people's hands so they get to be in the driver's seat of what they're creating in their mind, the programs that move them toward what they desire.
Yeah, so when I was 9 years old, Penny, I was told by a doctor that I would never walk for the duration of my life independently because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. I remember the day I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor who performed my surgeries sat my parents and I down in a conference room, and it was going through the success and what they were hoping to monitor as a result of the surgery. But at the end of his little soliloquy, he told me and my parents that I've got one more thing to tell you, and that you'll never walk without assistance because of the severity of your disability. So the next day I had to go back to school, and I was called out to the principal's office. And Dr. Carol Crewley was my middle school principal. And I had told her everything the doctor had said the previous day, and she had everyone assigned to my file in her office, from teachers to social workers. My therapists and parents were there. And she looked at me at the end of the story and she said, the only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you placed on yourself personally. And ever since then, the emotional baggage that I carried as a result of knowing that I wouldn't be able to walk, I feel was lifted. So my next question has to do with managing emotional baggage and how you believe most people can manage emotional baggage successfully in order to thrive on the other side. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, first of all, let me just say that is an incredible, incredible story. Not only to represent your resiliency in choosing to learn how to walk when the doctors literally told you that you would never, but in deciding to believe those counselors, those people that told you something opposite. So what I do that aligns with that is helping people to recognize, what do you believe now and what capable, all of the things that help. So sometimes what is happening is there's an experience locked in the past memories. People don't know what it is, but there's something that's stopping them from moving forward. They say sometimes it feels like a glass ceiling that they keep bumping up against, and they don't know why. So this comes to fruition when people want to move forward, but they don't know how to make themselves do it. And there's something underneath the surface stopping them, and often that has to do with a past experience. So what I like to imagine is that there is an experience, and if you take one of your hands and just wrap it up like a fist, that is the actual experience, the facts of what happened in the past. And then take another hand and wrap it around that fist. The way that you feel about that experience is as if it's the hand that's wrapped around the fist. So it's the emotional connection to the past experience that causes us to continue to believe what is holding us back. What I help people do is to recognize how to unravel those two things, how to recognize what happened in the past and how can you choose to learn from it. Because once we choose to learn from the pain, it no longer becomes an infected sore. Just like you mentioned that you're dealing with some challenging things, and with infection, the infection is able to be removed once we unravel how we feel about the past and we ask the questions that shift us from the pain into the desired outcome. So that's what we do, is help them to shift into, what did I learn from that? How can that help me to move forward? Sometimes there's people that don't believe in us, and you can take that and cause it to be something that can help you to move forward instead of just holding you back. So it's each of us. Each of us get to choose, are we going to continue to be pulled down by the limitations of our past, or are we going to, like you are such an amazing example of being able to take that hard thing and overcome it. One of the things I love most about your story is you demonstrated the power of belief. What you focus your mind on continues to help you to move forward to what you want. Those beliefs that you have in your mind create the physical outcomes of what you can achieve. If you believe it or if you don't believe it, either way, it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are your thoughts on the idea of a transformation and what goes into sort of the transformation of our thought process? Because I know that you work with both educational leaders, teachers, parents, and leaders to work on the idea of the whole concept of transformation. So, what do you want people to know about their power to transform, my friend?
When it comes to transformation, it really is an identity shift. The subconscious way that we see ourselves and the way that we relate to others comes down to our personal identity. And if you want to change behaviors on the outside, first, that means that you changed what you believe on the inside. Whether that means what you believe about yourself or what you're capable of. And that's really the shift that we want to empower people to experience, is that identity shift, so that they can let go of what they fear and create what they desire.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know that you're a mom of 5 kids, so congratulations in running
Thank you.
the parent sort of triathlon, my friend. And I'm curious, how do you view the whole concept of parental resilience and being resilient as a parent in order to also protect your own mental health as parents, who also ensuring that your kids thrive, my friend. So, what's your definition of parental resilience, my friend?
So when I mentioned that state I was in 20 years ago, that is the opposite of parental resilience, the opposite of being able to take time to take care of myself. I didn't have the emotional tools that I needed. What I wish I would have been able to do is to take those moments to learn to process my emotions and then to show up in a healthy way for my kids. Being able to be there with your kids in an emotionally regulated state means the world of difference. I was triggered by my kids' temper tantrums. And because my emotions got flooded, I went into that monkey state of the brain in the back, and I wasn't able to stay calm with them. The opposite of that I wish I would have been able to do, that I teach parents now to do, is to learn first on the inside how to let go of your own anxiety, how to let go of being triggered, to shift those emotions into a calm state. And once you achieve that for yourself, you can show up as a parent to help them co-regulate. Instead of a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old having a temper tantrum, if you have that calmness inside of yourself, you can, in a sense, be the calm in the eye of the storm. Instead of reacting to what's happening in the circumstances, you can choose to be with them in their pain, to give them a hug instead of, hey, you should stop, or it's going to be better, or distracting them, or all of the things we try to do to fix it in the moment. We can simply allow themselves in that moment to have a few minutes to just express how they feel, and then shift into, okay, and what can we do next? What can you do about this? So it's empowering questions that shift from the fear into the desired outcome. What are you learning from this? So the more that we show up for ourselves and learn that emotional regulation and learn how to find that calmness and the connectedness in ourselves, the more we're going to be able to do that for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also wanted to get your opinion on narcissistic relationships because I know that you have experience personally and helping your clients through them. And I know that for some people, they have sort of a toxic sense of safety to stay in narcissistic relationships. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you think we can successfully recover from those relationships that are toxic and rebuild our lives to come out on the other side, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
That is a really hard question. I love how you framed it as a toxic emotional relationship where we feel like we have to stay in that relationship. Being in that place is when you're deep in it, you're deep in an identity of victim. You feel powerless, and the way that I felt, I'll explain it from first person. I was in a narcissistic relationship for 17 years in the father of my children's life, but also in past relationships from, the age of 12 to 16, there was a stepfather. So the brain has created patterns of powerlessness. Somehow the identity of how that person sees themselves in that narcissistic relationship. If you study a framework, there's a book called The Power of Ted, and there's a dreaded drama triangle that explains perfectly what's happening inside of those kind of dynamics. There's a persecutor, there's a victim, and there's a rescuer. And in a narcissistic relationship, that person that stays because of the toxicity sees themselves as powerless. They see themselves, and then it also, bounces from one role to the next. But it really is an identity of giving away your power. I had to recognize who I really was inside of that relationship. For 17 years, I kept growing one step at a time to learn to recognize my emotions, recognize who I truly was, despite all the things that that other person would tell me. I had to choose to believe inside of myself regardless of the outside. So that was really what I needed to learn from that relationship, that it empowered me. It helped me to believe, even when there's a term in narcissistic relationships called gaslighting, where they're literally telling you an identity that's opposite to one that you feel. And the two oppositions create a craziness in your brain, like, who am I really? Am I that person? Am I the person I believe? So what I had to learn through that is I am who I choose to believe I am. I can claim my power, excuse me, and I can choose to respond in the way that I want to without giving away my power. Now, 5 years later, I've learned not to let that person trigger me. I helped them to move into an apartment complex where we literally lived in the same place. And I remember one day getting into the back of his truck, helping him move all of his things, and he was still him. He was still doing the same thing that he did, but I wasn't triggered emotionally. We have the power to choose how we feel inside, regardless of circumstances. And that is the power of what your belief can do for you, and switching from that old identity to the new identity. I did have to come to a place where it was like burning down the phoenix. Literally, I had to choose to burn down the old identity and be reborn from the ashes so that I could move into this vision that I had of myself, of being able to create this message that I'm now delivering to the world to help people to see how to empower yourselves and how to create this new identity and new transformation so that you can live your purpose, so that you can move toward your desired outcome with joy. And it really is a beautiful, beautiful story of becoming new and letting go of the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Penny, I speak for a living, so
Mhm.
I always have to think before I speak because you want to portray the best version of yourself. So I'm curious for your perspective, the importance of really thinking before we speak, especially when we're emotionally triggered, my friend. What's the importance of thinking before you speak when you're emotionally triggered? What do you want people to do?
Oh, I love that question because when it all comes down to it, that is the moment of decision. Am I going to choose to automatically react to what the other person is saying, or the opposite of reacting is to choose to pause? If you have to put your hand on your mouth, then do it. If you have to decide what is my boundary when someone triggers me, the practice that I use is to choose to pause before speaking. And I love that you say that you think about what you say before. But even going deeper than that is thinking about how you feel and how the other person, how you want the other person to feel in that relationship. The toxicity is what damages, the reaction damages that relationship when you automatically say whatever is hurtful, what you're defending, what you believe to be true, the need to be right, all of the way that the ego shows up in those toxic relationships. But the opposite of that is your calmness. I created a practice for myself where I would excuse myself. You know what? I'm a little bit upset right now, and I would memorize what to say before I needed to say it so that I could say it, go pause, and then come back. So I'm upset right now. I'm going to go give myself 5 minutes, or I'm going to go to the restroom. I'll be right back. And then we can continue this conversation. Choosing not to continue the conversation while you're emotionally triggered is so critical. First, go get calm. Find that, and it's that calmness practice that we talked about. How do you get calm? You breathe. You calm down, you imagine the images. What do you not want? What do you want? And then choosing in that practice to get calm, and then you come back. How do I want to feel in this relationship? How do I want to show up as my best self? Regardless of what the other people are saying, you get to choose who you are. You can choose your words, you can choose your thoughts, and eventually with practice, you can choose your emotions. So choosing to be your best self, regardless of what anybody else says, is what's going to make the difference. Claim that power of the pause, find out how you want to show up, and use those 4 R's. Recognize what you don't want, recognize what you want to remove, replace it with what you do want, and reimagine it. Before you go back into that situation, imagine it in your mind. How do I want to show up? What do I want to say? How do I want to feel when I say it? You get to choose who you are, and that's how you show up, being better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And I'm curious to piggyback off what you just said and ask you about achieving elite mental fitness in life and how that can sort of contribute to the clarity of our decision making and our high pressure sort of situational decision making, my friend. So talk to me about the importance of mental fitness in life and what that means to you.
Yeah, mental fitness is that power of emotional regulation, just choosing to stay calm in the moment, but it's more than just calmness. It's recognizing all the things that are flowing through your experience so that you can make progress, recognizing who you are, what you want to do in life, and what that means to move forward toward that. Emotional fitness is a practice just like going to the gym every day. You go to the gym to get strong. You go to the gym not when you need to run the marathon, but you go to the gym to train. Mental fitness is just the same. Every morning when I wake up in the morning, I do a meditation. I listen to one of my own recordings. My own voice is going through my head. And I remember it's as if my higher self is speaking to me in that moment. When I wake up with those fear, the uncertainty, all the heaviness, I get to remember who I was in that moment that I made that recording. And it helps me to remember, what am I doing and why am I doing it? So mental fitness is a practice of imagining these 4 R's, of continually recognizing what you aren't, what the fear is. So like bring that picture into your memory of the sun and the clouds. Where do you want to go? So it's the practice of 3 key focuses that we talk about every week in our weekly group sessions. The first focus is, what is the desired outcome that you want to create? Imagine that, visualize it. What does it look like? Use all of your 5 senses. What does it look like for you today? What does it look like for you in a month? What does it look like for you in a year? Really feel those emotions in your body when you visualize that desired outcome. The second key focus is the clouds. What's heavy? What am I experiencing? What's hard right now? And shifting it into, what can I learn from this? The third key focus is, what's my one next step? How can I take action today? Because that's where your power is. Your power to choose what you desire, your power to let go of the past and create what you want in your future. The third key focus is, what is the one next step?
Yeah, absolutely. And Betty, I'm curious to ask you if you believe that accountability and intention are interconnected. And I'm curious to ask that because of the societal pressure that we're under today and how that affects our decision making. So do you think intention and accountability are interconnected, my friend?
So interconnectedness, I love, our company is called Kokoro because it is the connection between heart, body, mind, and soul. When all of those parts are aligned, you can naturally feel that heliotropic desire pulling you upward and forward. The opposite of that is reactivity toward what everybody else wants you to do. Just like I experienced in that narcissistic relationship, each person is facing their own pressures from the outside. There's expectations from family, there's expectations from culture, there's things that we feel like we have to do. But when you claim your power, you bring it all in and you ask yourself, what do I desire? What do I want? Because until you get in alignment with pointing your mind toward that desired outcome, everything will feel hard. It will feel out of alignment. It will feel like there's this have to yucky feeling of doing something for someone else's reason. When you find your reason, that's what's going to create the alignment within you.
Yeah, and based on that, I'm curious to get your opinion on why do you think, as a society today, that we're so, sort of territorially divided, my friend? Because I wanted to start this podcast to have conversations to bring people closer together instead of farther apart. So I'm curious about how you believe that our society has become so divided and how we heal those societal divisions. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I love that question. If we go back to the picture of the sun and the clouds, one of the things that it teaches us is first that there's a gradation between sun and darkness. So that gradual change will happen. But there's also in the vision, the picture that I show people, it has a river going from the sun toward the clouds, representing gravity, representing human nature. Our natural human reactions are going to happen automatically. whether we want them to or not. Division is one of those things that happens automatically. And intentionally moving toward unity and peace, and the way that I love to think of it as synergy, creating relationships where there's win-win relationships, that's very intentional. So how do we move toward that? I think it's really a matter of what Gandhi said, to be the change you wish to see in the world. It begins by us, each of us, choosing not to react emotionally. Don't say that hurtful thing that's going through your head. Go figure out why that thing is going through your head and figure out how to remove it, how to let it go. You don't have to react to what the world is telling you to do. You don't have to react to those emotions that are pulling you down toward the clouds. It's an intentional decision. What do you want? If you want to create unity and peace, then that means pausing. That means creating intentional relationships. That means showing up as your best self and finding ways to create relationships that move toward that together, that have common vision with what you're creating. So I love that vision of unity. In fact, I did a post on my personal Facebook page yesterday about ways to let go of hate and let go of forgiveness and let go of guilt, because it's those heavy emotions that get in between us and another person when it comes to a healthy relationship. Either we're coming from a healthy place or a toxic place, and that is a choice individually.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm going to combine my last two questions because they're interconnected. And I'm curious, based on your life experience, Penny, I'm curious to ask you, what has life taught you about the importance of knowing your value proposition as a person and the value that you bring to the world? And how do you want that to contribute to your overall professional and personal legacy, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
I remember there was a time in my life where it felt like I was doing everything for everyone else's reasons. I was on that treadmill of fulfilling expectations from the outside. In order to find your purpose and truly what you're born to do, I believe it's first a matter of turning inward, then turning upward, and then turning outward. When I say inward, I mean creating that inner alignment, the desire of what you want, creating that autonomy, your desired outcome, what you are moving toward. That is going to create the natural flow of motivation. And then turning upward to a higher power. How are you going to make a difference in the world? What contribution do you make? And what does that feel like? And that connects to Maslow's triangle, if you're familiar with that. What contribution and the fulfillment and the joy that you're going to experience as you make a difference in the lives of other people. Finding clarity in truly what the values are for you. And then turning outward means you're turning out to be a servant. You're turning out to give. You're not turning out to get or to grasp or to try to get something from someone else, but it comes from a place of a full heart because you've already experienced that healing within yourself and the alignment within yourself to decide what are your values and how does that help you to be a better person and show up in the way that you want to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about your personal and professional legacy, my friend. And how do you want that to be defined?
My personal and professional legacy, personally, I want to be the example to my kids of showing up as my best self, of moving toward my desired outcome, regardless of what fears pull down on me and my belief. And so that's a continual example, a continual becoming and renewing. And I show up at home as my best self. Yes, I make mistakes. Yes, I apologize for those mistakes, but that's really what life is about. Having those honest moments of conversation. And the legacy that I want to create in the world is to empower each person take responsibility for their own emotions, to show up as their best self so that they can respond in those relationships in a healthy way where it comes from their heart. Their heart is soft and open. They're able to be parents and teachers and leaders in a way that truly empowers others.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Penny, tell me, Uh, if people want to get connected with the Kokoro method or the framework itself for you personally, what's the best way they can do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can find us on our website. That is where our programs live. It's kokorocreators.com, Kokoro creators.com. There's a page there called Programs that explains the 4 different stages that we help people move through. We also have free meditations on YouTube. We're posting social shorts. So however you want to connect, we are here to support those that want to move forward.
Well, absolutely. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed engaging in conversation with you about emotional regulation, mental health, parenting, and everything in between. My friend, you're doing tremendously important work, and I'm honored and privileged that you carved out rather a few minutes to talk to me. Your time and attention on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me. It was definitely a joy to be with you.